So everybody's got different preferences in rod and reel setups for whatever technique they may be doing. When it comes to frog fishing, me personally, what I've found is I like to have two different setups. I like to have one rod for when I'm fishing more of your shorter casts, your target-oriented frog fishing techniques. And then I also have another rod that I like to use when I'm making your real long bomb casts across the big weed flat, whether it's duckweed, eelgrass, matted milfoil, lily pad fields. I like to have a different rod for that compared to when I'm making shorter target casts. First, when I'm fishing around targets, whether it's docks, wood, cut banks, that sort of thing, I like a little bit shorter rod and a rod that's a little bit more limber. So this is a 7-foot medium heavy. It allows me to skip that frog a little bit better. It allows me to work the frog a little easier in those open targets. And I'm usually using a little bit smaller frog and one that's maybe a little bit lighter than the ones I'd be fishing over a big mat. That little bit smaller frog is gonna allow me to walk it better. A lot of times they get it a little bit better in those open water situations. And I'm throwing it on an 8-to-1 bait casting reel, and this is 40-pound braided line. I feel like that little bit lighter braid allows you to skip these frogs a little bit better than maybe a 65 or something like that. So that shorter action rod, a little bit more limber, is gonna be a little bit better for skipping under trees, a little bit easier to walk those frogs in open water. So that's setup number one. Number two, when I'm making real long casts, I go with a little bit beefier rod. So this is a 7-foot 4-inch heavy action rod. A couple reasons for that. With a longer rod, generally you can make a longer cast. And with that stiffer rod on a long cast, it's gonna allow you to get a little bit better hook set too. You have more direct contact and a rod that's not gonna give as much on that hook set. So this happens to be 65-pound test braid. I think you could get away with 50 if you want. I like a little bit heavier than when I'm working in around shallow, isolated targets. And then the frog itself is a little bit different too. This is a bigger, heavier frog. It's gonna sit a little bit lower in the water and push more water. And I think that can be super key when you're fishing matted grass. It's gonna give those fish a little bit more movement in the top for them to hone in on those longer mats compared to just an isolated open water target. So those are kind of two different setups that I have for fishing frogs in two different ways, and you can certainly get away with one or the other for all your frog fishing, but in my opinion, you know, there's separate tools for the job, whether you're fishing a big expansive weed flat with duckweed, eelgrass, lily pad fields versus skipping around trees, docks, little isolated targets. So I feel like your hooking percentage is going to go up based on using those two different tools for those two different areas. And I think it's just a better tool for the job to have a couple separate rods for those two different techniques of using the topwater frog.